Here we go again with the Business Not As Usual podcast. Vince and Mike coming at you today for episode 59 of the pod. 59. Mike, 59. welcome, and good luck. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Vince. Looks like we're almost wearing the same shirt.
Freakily, yes. If you're listening to the audio version, different. Check out the video. We are wearing the same shirt, roughly.
What's hilarious is on a different video format, they looked much closer. But now that we're on here, but almost the same.
It's lighting. It's got to be lighting.
It's all about the lighting, Vince.
Lighting is so important.
Lighting is so important.
You know what else is important, Mike?
Do tell.
Data.
Ooh, yes.
Data is the lifeblood of the modern organization, or at least data should be the lifeblood of the modern organization. And today we are going to have a conversation about data. Now, this is one of yours. This was an idea of yours. So what were you thinking about data, Michael?
So I'm going to even go even further. That data is now the world's new greatest resource. That yes, it has taken over in this new digital age for other resources, because it is now the thing that if the data is in the right format, we can mine it. We can add in, machine intelligence to it, and we can do things with it, which then allows us to do a whole host of things. And when I say that, we take a scenario right now. You have people in an office or even on a factory floor where all of a sudden they gather around like a laptop or something on the production line and they're scratching their heads that something's gone wrong, but they don't know what it is. And now we have to go into they have to go into a mode of trying to figure that out. But wouldn't it be awesome, Vince, if there was all this data that problem was predicted, that problem was the machine saw that or predicted that something might be happening, and then gave a heads up to someone before the whole production line went down, or you have a whole bunch of people in office sitting around a laptop trying to figure out what's going on. And it could be in a host of things. It could be at a bank. It could be at an insurance company. It could be a whole host of things where people are trying to figure something out and they don't have the right information. So now they're trying to solve it on hunch, on gut feel. This is how we used to do it. And that is what I'm talking about. That is like the new. And so when we talk about a digital transformation, digital is not the destination. We're using digital now to get to a more cognitive world. And that's what I mean about what I want to talk about today.
And I guess, we're looking at this data and prediction with the best of intents. This isn't like,
100%.
Any particular social media platform mining your data in a creepy way, where they're then, selling it on or doing weird things with it. And I don't want to make nefarious things. I don't want to make any allegations, so I'm not going to, I'm going to make it anonymous to protect the innocent. But it's funny, as you were talking about that, using data to predict problems. It doesn't necessarily predict problems per se, but as you were talking about it, I kept thinking of a tool used in the control phase of a Six Sigma project, which is statistical process control, and they're controls that are placed at key points in your process to let you know whether your process is operating in control, in a state of control, or out of control. And so what it does, so it doesn't sort of predict, but what it does is it flags, hey, something's unusual here. And so what that means is, and this is where I think it dovetails nicely with what you said there. What it means is that you are not relying on intuition and hunches and gut feel, but you're rather relying on data and data collected in real time to tell you that there's something going on that is, that has less than a 1% probability of happening just randomly. So you should do something. Now, the flip side to that is it prevents you from overreacting when something bad does happen, or something, sorry, not bad, because you could be out of control in a good way. But it prevents you from overreacting when you are operating in a state of control. And so, okay, yeah, it's, we're fluctuating, we're showing random normal variation in our process, or at this junction of the process, because you would put it along the way. We don't need to do anything. The only time we need to investigate is when you are operating out of control. And again, out of control could be good, it could be bad, but that's sort of where my head went when you were talking about that. And I guess it is reliant on data, which is, I like the coining of, data is a resource, because it is. It's and it needs the due protection of the organization because it is the new currency. Yeah.
And I think, to your point, if you look back, and we're trying not to be reactive, that's why we're using the data. We're trying to be proactive. And what I mean by that is autonomous cars, the ability for a car to stop automatically or accelerate, they had, like, that technology is decades old. What the problem was we were tackling the problem of, okay, we have this technology, but now how are we going to use it? And so it was more reactive. And what they were trying to do is build algorithms that said, if this happens, then the car has to do this. And if this happens, but the problem is there was way too many variables, and it was way too reactive. So it switched to, well, if we can get all this data from the camera, from lasers that tell you how far you're away from something, then we're just going to have these prediction models that say this is what a good driver would do in this situation. It wasn't like they had to come up with every scenario. And so that's what I'm talking about, the data. Now, that all makes sense and it's all great. Now, if we look for a traditional business, so you started off by saying, social media. They collect your data natively in a form that they can then use. But now let's look at things like a hospital or a bank or an insurance company or any government agency. And I'll just talk about the healthcare system. My son had to go for a minor surgery, and we had to fill out a whole bunch of pieces of paper, and we're in a pandemic. So they scanned it and then they emailed it to me so I could fill it out in hard copy. And then somehow I had to give it back to them, which I said I can't because I don't have a fax machine. And so then they had to call me. And then we just ran through now that's not very, that's what I mean about the data in the right information. Wouldn't have been awesome if I went online and answered those questions, and then they would have been in their database in a way that they can use. Now, in the micro, they would never have to call me. But in the macro, they'd have this wealth of information that they then could run algorithms against to go, Don't need to call that person. Oh, this person says something that might be a problem with the anesthesia. Maybe we should just call that person. So instead of calling 100% of the people, now that nurse only has to call like 30% of the people. So I've cut that. That's what I mean by predicting. And that was to your point. It's come across information that's like, oh, this might be a problem. I might be predicting something. So let's call this person. But if you're not collecting it in a way that you can use it, it's kind of hard to digitally transform. And I know we've always talked about the people aspect, but this is like getting really into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Of a transform. This is what we're talking about when we say you need to transform. So instead of getting the paper version, would have been awesome to get some version of it digitally, or if I were to email it back to them, they could somehow extract that information and put it in a database.
Right. Because then you can do something with it. Like,
yes, they can't do anything. It's lost.
Which means that their quote prediction is really a guess, or it's over processing. It's you know, to your point, calling 100% of the people because they need to
right now.
Right. And so you can, you know, as much as its prediction is forward looking, you can then start to build a database of historical performance. So, you know, we've noticed that, you know, patients in this particular age demographic that have the XYZ, you know, pre-existing conditions and have this type of surgery typically require this type of follow-up, you know, 30 days later. And so you are not, it's not so much predicting as it is leveraging your historical data to be able to then anticipate the needs of your customers, your clients, your patients, whatever the case may be. Right. So it's really then important that you collect that data. But there's a great Mark Twain quote that I like. And because Mark Twain was he was a master of the word. And it's basically to the effect of, data is like garbage. You better know what you're going to do with it before you collect it.
Right.
So, you know, in a lot of the organizations that I have spoken to or been involved with or coached at or whatever, they love data. They recognize the value of data. They are collecting a ton of data, but they're not then using it because they don't know what to do with it. They just know we need data.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say there, buddy?
No, nothing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to jump in. No, there's another awkward moment brought to you by the Business Not As Usual podcast. So they're collecting all this data, but they don't know what they're doing with it. And they still then rely on that intuition and that tribal knowledge, that gut feel, to drive their actions or to make decisions. And that's a huge miss, because if you've got the data and you're collecting it anyway, you may as well figure out how you're going to use it to make, you know, your customer's life better, your patient's life better, whatever, but also your organization's life easier, because you can cut down on the number of activities that you need to engage in to still deliver a quality experience. So, you know, don't just collect data. Don't just like have it for the sake of having it. Don't, you know, a lot of projects are like, well, we're gonna build a data lake, and we're gonna
do stuff with it.
Cool. Well, what are you gonna do with it? I don't know. We're just gonna collect data. I mean,
I don't know.
You know,
you need it. You never know what you're gonna do. You never know when you're gonna need it.
Which then I think speaks to another problem, which is, you know, different areas of the business need different pieces of data, and sometimes they call them by different names, which means, are you collecting the same, like name versus surname versus last name versus, like, those are all the same thing. And yet if you're calling it something different, those are different, you know, fields, different columns in your data lake. So again, if you are collecting data, do you have a data strategy, and are you using it to make everyone's life easier? And that's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the next thing I want to talk about, because we've always talked about prediction is not automation, and people conflate the two. And people conflate the two because if we have automation, Vince, then we could be more efficient, have less people, and but automation and what we're talking about are different. And we can get into it, but what we're saying is you collect the information and have it in a way that you can run algorithms against to find patterns, and then you could then say, hey, nurse, instead of calling 100% of the people, you call 20% of the people. You're more efficient, but that's not automation.
No.
Automation is taking your processes and what of those don't have to have, that can be run through the system, that don't need human intervention.
Right.
Which makes you efficient, but those aren't the same thing, and people put those together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you would leverage data and predictive analytics for the purposes of building in automation.
Right.
But it's not necessarily like de facto automation. Because you can also, I mean, let's look at this the other way. You can build automation that doesn't leverage predictive modeling. You could do it
100%.
It's going to be terrible, but you could do it.
You could do it. You could just take those. You could take the processes and say, and then try and RPA. You could do something like that. You could,
and the end result could always be kick this out to a customer service rep, or kick this out to a frontline customer facing. It could always do that, and that you've leveraged automation. It doesn't add any value, but you've done it.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, prediction, I think, is so much more, because it's actually taking that data and giving and turning it into action, giving it meaning, so that you can borrow an approach from my buddy Pareto, and just focus on the 20% that needs the majority of your attention, so that and it's not that the other 80% don't need anything. They just may need something a little bit lighter touch, but you can actually focus on delivering the value based on historical performance of that data, right? And I think this works regardless of industry, regardless of sector. It doesn't matter.
100%.
This works if you know what you're collecting and what you're planning to do with it.
And so I know people are like, but my company collects PDFs, and we're not fancy social media companies. And I got it. That's why most of us go through a transformation to get away from the move from the old world to the new world. And the great panacea of the new world is all your customers are going to be, you're going to collect it all digitally. Like somehow they're going to all fill it in online, or someone's going to fill it in online for them, or one of your providers will do it. But in the interim, how are you going to get there? Because we're not going to wait. Or as you start iterating, you'll get some things, but not all. So there are other things that you could do. It's not that expensive anymore to get some OCR technology to be able to take those forms that you have, that unstructured data, and then from the forms, and then read them. At least you'll somehow get a version of all the data that you need, that you can then, on the one hand, start using it, but on the other, realize what's useful and what's not when you actually start your transformation. Like, what from these forms actually helps us find, like, what algorithms do we run that actually helps us find patterns, and what are just questions that we've always had that don't add any value. Like, if you're not running algorithms against them, then that information is not needed. So if you can sort of to scrape the data, then you can run algorithms. Then you can actually see, of the 38 questions that you ask, it's really 15 that get you what you need. So you don't need those other ones.
Yeah. I mean, you may still need some of those. You still may need some of those tombstone, which is a terrible phrase, by the way. But
we always use it too.
I know.
What's the tombstone information?
I mean, name, date of birth, like the stuff that would go on your tombstone. I assume, guess. But like,
I assume
address is is that? Would you put your address on your tombstone? Maybe not.
Last time I checked, no.
That's the kind of, like, you may need to still ask that question because you're doing something else with it. But imagine being able to identify an outbreak of a novel virus or bacteria based on,
imagine,
there seems to be a cluster and I'm sure a lot of the health like hospitals and research, like, I'm sure they're doing this. I hope at least, maybe naively.
I hope people smarter than us are doing it.
I hope people much smarter than us are doing it. But like, we've noticed that there seems to be a significant rise, an unusually out of control increase in these symptoms, and they all trace back to this postal code or zip code in the US or whatever. Then you if you teach your automation or your predictive model enough, and by the way, that takes a long time.
It's not easy, kids.
But then it can start to notice, as you said, these patterns, and even start to identify patterns you weren't even looking for. And I think that's just to back up a little bit, this idea that people are going to just stroll in, and I think we talked about this several episodes back. They're just going to stroll into Best Buy and buy give me a robot to help me make decision. Like,
correct.
It's not going to happen. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of data, a lot of historical data, to get it to the point where it is providing value, and that's where you can then start to see some of the benefits of automation.
Right.
But this is a long drawn out process, or it can be, at least.
And you need, and to do that training, as you were saying, you need a lot of you need a lot of data. It's not like 10 documents that you turned into data. It's a lot over a period of time for it to pay the dividends. But when it does, it hits. But this is not someone just telling you they're going to give you some AI software and you're like good to go. It's your data. It's what you want to do with it. It's training it for the outcomes that you're looking for. So, and it's not easy work. Like we've always said, it's not easy work. This is the hard work to get to the glory. And it's not as easy. And this is kind of when we had our presentation, Vince. This is what we're saying when there's like hard work that needs to be done, or your organization has to change to get to to be able to use the shiny software. Like, this is what we're talking about. To be able to use the shiny software properly, you have to have those predictive models, and you have to have done a lot of work around them to get there. And that's a lot of human work to get to the automation.
But it's an investment.
Oh, it's the long game. I'm just trying to tell everyone. It's the long game. It's not, you're going to install the software and your predictive models are going to save your organization.
Yeah, yes, it is absolutely the long game. It is absolutely useful and valuable, but you've got to be patient. So if you're looking for something to solve a problem that's coming up next month, maybe do something else.
Isn't it?
This isn't it. Yeah, maybe do something else. So I mean, data, and I don't think this is a hard sell. Like, Data is important. Duh. It is the currency. It is the lifeblood. It is the thing that allows organizations to do what they do and continue to grow and continue to deliver value. I don't think we're saying anything too offside or unusual, but yeah.
But I think on the flip side of that, that's the easy sell. The hard sell is doing the work to get the data in the format which you need, so you can have the amount of data that you can then start training the software to look for those patterns. What are those? Then you have to do the hard work from a business perspective. What are those patterns that you're looking for? What are the ones that are going to give you the results that you're looking for? And then train the software to do it. I think that's where the sell is.
Yeah.
Theoretically, it's like, oh yeah, this is magic. It's awesome. But the part of the project that says this is all the work that goes into it, that's the work that I think is the sell. But is an important aspect in driving a new business model.
Right. And anytime I think of this, I think of the why it's important and why this matters. And again, I'm gonna go back to the Six Sigma training, because it was, I mean, it's very data driven. It's very scientific. It is it's the reason why I like that methodology as a way of solving problems. But my trainer always talked about turning data into information into knowledge, knowledge into action. And so it all, like, if you want to take the right action, you need to have the right data.
Yeah.
You need to have it, because without it, you are guessing. And I don't know, man, when I'm trying to make decisions on strategies or approaches or next steps in my own business, like I don't want to guess. I don't want to, basically playing darts in the dark. Like I'm not going to just throw a dart and hope to hit the dartboard. I'm going to turn on the light and hopefully, well, I'm still going to miss it, but you know what I mean? I have a better
chance. But not as bad.
I have a better chance. But, yeah, there we go. Data. That is, an on fire 28 minutes on data.
It's important.
It's really important. And it's important that you do it well and that you take the time, just like all of this transformational stuff that we talk about. Like, you've got to invest the time. It's not easy. It's hard. And that's, what keeps us busy is the hard stuff, but it's you can't expect that it's gonna come easy. Nothing worth doing ever does.
No.
With that, we're gonna have to come up with a clever title for this one. Some data, maybe data all caps. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
All caps with the exclamation mark.
But yeah, this has been an interesting look at the importance of data and the value and not a hard sell, but you got to know what you're going to do with it before you collect it. So data is the currency of the new world. With that, then, Mike, who's available at michaelmartino.ca. I'm Vince, who's available at vincentmirabelli.com. But we are Vince and Mike. This has been and will continue to be the Business Not As Usual podcast. We will catch you in episode number 60.
See ya.